Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Goh Lee Kwang. Goh is my family names. I was born in the north of Malaysia. It was a small island called Penang. I was like as a kid, I was much into like arts thingy, but at the times I'm of course I don't know what is avant-garde or contemporary arts or things like that. I'm just simply into like things like music. Like there were I was lucky because at the time there was a singer songwriter movement awareness. Like there was a slogan like write your own songs thingy happened in Malaysia. So I was get into music, like writing song, learn how to play guitars and things like that. And at the same time, I was member of the art class in the secondary school. So I was doing like something like visual art design thingy, and then learn to play music or form like. And later on, of course, I got into more experimental or more alternative music. Like I play in a band, and then yeah, then things move on. I went to art college, yeah, just like most of you, and then I was major in oil painting, fine art, like because at the time there was not really a course for new media or things like that back in the mid 90s. Then then after I'm graduate from art school, I'm not so much into like pursue my career as a visual artist. So I decided to like okay try some other things. So let's that get me into exploring explore into the music world or the yeah, like I got into I make friends with who are more into like punk rock. Like so there was the underground music scenes which is not really related to the art scenes. Like to me is somehow is a new world, a different worlds. But I managed to like connect or bridge the two worlds from my own works. Is like at some point I was like okay, maybe like punk rock or rock and roll music is not really my thing. And then I move on to explore like electronic musics. And then because of my background, I learned about like some art movement back in the early 20th century, like the Dada, the Surrealism, and then Fluxus and things like that. And then I know like works by John Cage, Duchamp, and all this that actually enable me to go and explore different things with like with what I'm wanted to do. Like instead of like just like most people they like if you are like if you're an artist you just keep on like doing your painting, and then if you're a musician or you guitarist you just have to like play and practice or jamming do like doing a lot of practice things like that. And me I somehow yeah do something in between. It's like I'm not that hardworking. I have to be honest. So I'm not really like feel like practice my guitars like 12 hours, 16 hours a day. Although I tried before, or I don't feel like lock myself in the studio like with the smell of the turpentine, the oil paints, and then like yeah, painting for like 30 hours non-stop without sleeping and things like that. So yeah, that's how I got into like experimental with sound, but not really making like conventional music. And from there, of course, I start to making new friends, like friends who are like study abroad, and then they brought back some different music, like some composer like Carl Stockhausen, Luke Ferrari, and all these people, and even including some like less conventional rock music like Eastern Giant or Mountains from Germany, and then or like Miles Davis, John Coltrane's and jazz music and things like that. And from there, yeah, I of course at the same time I produce my own works. So, so okay, yeah, maybe to start with, maybe Elke, like let's listen to like my early work. This is my first work that being so-called recognized by most people. When I share, the people think like, yeah, somehow like these people can make music. Okay, so track one. Okay, thank you very much, Elka. So that was one of my earliest work. As like, yeah, most of you can somehow can hear, it is still very much like a, to me it's still very much like a band sound. So I'm using the sound source recorded by the bandmates, like bass, guitars, and then drums. But then I'm using like a different approach. Instead of like just record the sound, I'm using the sound source, but then somehow like somehow I use it and then I like turn it to a sound palettes and then I just paint like a new piece out of the sound source. But still, of course, the original sound source is very much organic, like guitar, bass, and drums is still very much rock and roll music. So when I started to explore like experimental music, I was like considered very lucky because at the time it was like is we are just coming to a new millenniums, but then like of course like we have computers, we have all this digital software and all things like that. But then at the same time, there are still a lots of like talking or like knowledge sharing about analog thingies like analog synthesizer or analog like recording devices. And to me, I'm used to like cassette, like from cassette to cine or even vinyls or like all these different sorts of materials. Like to me, I'm still like I'm all right with just like working on computers, like okay, pressing a few keys and then moving things around like on the screens. But I also don't mind working hands-on, like the sounds like the tracks you heard just now was actually recorded in the 4-track recorder. So it wasn't really like a so-called digital recording, but then of course later on I convert to digital and then move on to like do more adjustments or like composition with the tracks. And then okay, yeah, from there I start to, of course, then I spend more and more time with the computer or like not going to rehearsal studios that much anymore. And also I went that actually like so the that actually give me okay less opportunity to have like to record like a different sound source from the traditional instruments. So but of course which got me into try to compose with like more electronic music based of more digital like fully computers. So the next tracks is actually composed like just less than 12 months or like less than a years from the track you heard just now. So, and it is fully using digital software. So can we listen to the second tracks? Thank you very much. That actually remind me like how much struggles for me to come up with that compositions. Like remember at the time the computer was like it was a very slow computers, like maybe like 512 MB. So it was really, really slow. And then like the process, yeah, you cannot hear the process. Like the previews is simply doesn't work. Just like what you heard just now is like it sounds like things are not working properly, but that's how it sounds. That's how it should be. But then during the process, I was like, yeah, we spent hours just to like have to render, export the file, and then listen to back, and then make some adjustment and like doing things back and forth. So meaning even it was a period where actually if you are good with the analog equipment, maybe it's better like yeah to use analog equipment instead of like very slow computers. And just to let you know, like the track that you heard just now is like the two tracks, or actually all the tracks, all the composition that you're going to hear, or even including the upcoming one, they are not the full composition. They are just like a small bit of it. Like the second track is like the actual length is like 20 minutes, and then the first one was like 7 to 9 minutes, something like that. Okay, so move on from there. After I make these compositions, and then back in those days, like we can't share music on internet, or actually they are very slow, and there's no YouTube, no whatever. So the only ways I can like let I can bring my composition out of my studios because they are digital work, and then like you cannot like you the only ways I can do it is like I have to burn them to CDR, and then I bring it to other places where they have a CD room with the computers, and then they can listen to it. And with that is like a lots of extra steps compared to like what we can do today. But because of that, I slowly uh created somehow like a small scenes, like with some friends who are interested, or who kind of like they don't mind listen to music like this, or they and then not only like they don't mind, or they find them this kind of thing like quite interesting. And these peoples or these friends, they are dancers, they are like theater directors, or they are like independent movie makers, filmmakers. And so they are actually helping me to sort of like how do you call that, bring my works to the larger audience. Although of course they are not like, I'm not talking about like 10 100,000 people, but it's like it's it's not only me, but there are some friends who will like take my CDR, and then they make copy of the my music and then share it to other people's. And from there I start to build like a small follower, or like I'm start getting like jobs or commissions, like to compose for theater and dance, and even like invited to do some live performance, like in between, like to a punk band and a heavy metal band. That's me with my computers doing things like totally different. But yeah, that was actually back in those days. It was kind of all right for some of the audience. Like yeah, you don't get kicked out, or like they don't throw your computer away halfway during your performance. So, and then of course, I'm on the other hand, I'm also I try to explore different things, something like installation, because when I was in art school, I also making something like sculptures, and then yeah, like beside painting, also making sculptures, or like installation in the way like it's more visual art. But then when I learned that there is something called sound installation, I like to try my hand on it. So I'm also like when I got invited to participate in some group exhibitions, I will, instead of like I'm going back to making visual works, I will come out with some things like with sound and sound only. So in the beginnings, I was like trying something like, I would probably say like now looking back is something more extreme, as in like I will try the limit of what I can do with sounds. Like if I'm going to just exhibit something, like I will hire the speakers and then you go there, it's just a bare rooms and with like, with only the sounds coming like from here and there. And that's my installations. So, and then from there, I'm okay with my works. I'm also like with the like when I produce my work and then I make it, I sort of like self-release my music, which is something maybe quite common today, but back in those days when we say self-release, it's like, I'm printing the hard copies of my music into CDs. Like, oops, sorry, something like this. Like this is a CDs. I'm not sure how many of you still remember what it is. And then I'll go and sell it during some other events like theaters, performance, or even art exhibition. I would just set up the tables and then explain to people what I'm doing and then what it is. And then, and from there, because CD is a mass production, I have to find a way to like, get rid of them. So I'm also send out application for some like art residency or competition and things like that. And that's how it got me into like, I got accepted to some residencies like in Europe and so and okay, so the third tracks that we are going to listen is one of the pieces that coming later, but it is like somehow like the first piece that it was composed with the ideas like that can be something like sent out as an applications. So it's not a commission work, but it's a works that I think it speak the language of sound art. Okay, track 3. this is actually like the first time I'm actually talk about my life or like how I got into like making sound art and things of that, because usually or actually I'm more comfortable talking about my concept, like how I'm making this word or like how I develop my ideas from like maybe from 20 years ago until now, instead of talking about myself. So now I'm going to, yeah, now we are going into talk about the concept of my works. I think this is more important, or actually it's more interesting than like, yeah, than to listen to a boring guys like how he got here from there. Like, okay, so when I first started, there's like, before I know what is sound art, so like I was very much consider myself as an electronic musicians, like because I'm using computers, and then like in contrast to others people who are playing an instrument like acoustic guitar, electric guitars, or even keyboard or whatever. So, but then when I learned about this thing called sound art, and then like with help of the internet, when back in those days a very slow internet, but the good thing is like you got a lot of information in text form, like you can read. There is like there's no YouTube, like because you spend a lot of time. If you're going to spend more time on YouTube watching video, but you actually learn less. Reading is actually the fastest way to get the informations. So I got, somehow it might not be the correct idea of what is sound art, but it's got me started like, okay, I can do something with sound, or like, yeah, as like use the sounds to paint something, like making artwork with the sounds. And okay, then from there, how I'm started is like the first thing I was in my mind is like, okay, in music, there's one thing that I'm really, really like not good at is writing melody. It's like I don't know how to write like a very sweet or very good melodies. So when I started to working like experimental with sound, the first thing I did was like, I'm not going to produce any melodies. It's like it's just going to be rhythm. Like it's not beat, but repetitions, like minimal music. But even I find like minimal music is very melodic. So I'm produce something with just like, yeah, no melody, like you cannot hum along. So, and from there, that's the first thing I take out. But then the second thing is like, after like, if we are working like same like 16 hours a day in the studios, like keep on listening the same thing, I start to get bored with the rhythm as well, like the repeating thing that to maybe, yeah. So the second thing I do, I get rid of the rhythm. So my works become just like a pure soundscape. But get rid of rhythm doesn't mean like there's no rhythm. It's just like it's not in the 4x4 or like things like that. It's not standard, or it's not like you can count like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. It becomes just like a, yeah, it somehow become like an abstract painting, and that's actually enable me to do whatever I feel like it. Like I'm free from rhythm and melody, then it's basically I can do whatever I want. And by able to do whatever I want, actually I found myself is actually like the best way to produce work is actually being a good audience. As like, instead of like keep on working, like doing works like playing back what you're doing, like change this, adjust it, twist this knob, and then move this fader and things like that. It's actually to step back and listen to your works, like works in progress, and at the same time, it's like how your work sort of interact with the environments. I mean, like in your studio, you leave your windows open, or like leave your phone on, or nowadays you can even like, yeah, well, you can scroll down the social media, but then let your music play. But still, it is much better to like as an audience than to be like a creator, like a producer. Like you actually, the more you listen, then actually that's how I get, like the more idea I get, not only from the works that I produce, but from the surroundings. And I will like try to sort of like, people say like this is like accidentally sound like happen outside. Like I try to bring it into my composition and things like that. And no, but it's not only that, it's actually like opened up a new possibilities, like how you sort of like thinking about the structures or the like, yeah, the structures of a compositions or like a piece of works, and how your work is actually communicate with your environment, like the society, the communities, and all this. So from there, actually, that got me into doing some field recordings. So I go outside of the studios and doing field recordings, but of course, I don't have like fancy equipments to like get a very good sounds. And my interest also is not about like, yeah, getting very good ambient, like, yeah, natural sounds or something like that, some new world music, things like that. So I'm more into like capturing the sound that which mean which means something to me, like something like the sounds of like, I would say like some activity happening in my community. Like I will go to like the wet markets in the morning, so I will like the train tracks, the train like passing by the movement, or like people chatting, like in Malaysia that we like, yeah, everyone is like multilingual. So when you hear people talking, it's like you always realize that you will find like fascinating, because people talk in different language and yet they can understand each other. So I did all these field rankings, and then I not actually using them like in position, but more the document for myself. Is like, okay, this is more like my own sound diary that give me inspiration to move, like how I'm going to produce my work. Okay, actually, because of that, I think we should skip the track 4. Let's move on to track 5, which is the something that is the only tracks like for tonight. Oh, sorry, for the afternoons. For this afternoon, like I'm actually using the sound source, the field recording, because I'm ready to do it. I really do it. But this is like by invitation of a friend. Okay, concept for this competition is actually, hold on. The concept of this competition is actually like showing people what is the sounds of Kuala Lumpur. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Since like I choose like not really like the right tracks to share. So yeah, hmm, yeah, I'm not very good at this because like how to say, they are like to me it's like when I finish a works or like when the works when I produce a work or even when I finish the work, there's always like is trying not to attach too much with my work. Like it's like so I somehow so to say that I'll give a lots of rooms to my works like when I come out with the compositions. Like most people would say like it's very much improvised as in like I can like I don't mind to reconfigure the work as in like in even in terms of the structures. Like it can be like the ending can be the beginning, can I can easily or I don't mind like the last 1 minute I move it to the first minute or like the maybe in the middle like the 10 minutes move to 20 minutes and things like that, because somehow I find that this is actually a way to freeze up the sort of like the structures. And also like it's not really structures, but in the core of the whole thing is like how you actually how you see your work like as an artist. Because to me there are always a lot of possibility in terms of like produce works. Like there's no necessities we have to have the like the sort of like so-called time base, because when I first start to produce works, like I was fall into this genre called the new media art, or those like sound art is part of the new medias, and then people will tell you like your is the time based, your work is time based, like there's the ending, there's a beginning and things like that. So me, I somehow try to break away from there. So I produce works that's like I'm not saying like okay, I'm not taking any responsibility with my works, but I'm just saying like it's not really that important. Like your composition have to start from like the first second and then end like in the 45 minutes and 30 minutes and wherever, and or it can be anything. It's like think about it as in like in the perspective from the audience. Like most of my work, I would like to see them as installations, like installation where like it's only can happen when there's audience. Like I uploaded my works, like most of my work, like not all but most of it on Bandcamp, and then like anyone they can just go there and click listen, and you don't have to start from the first seconds. Like you can always like skip and then like listening and then like maybe listen for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or if you feel like listen to the whole track, some of them like 3 hours or like some of them even longer. But to me, like yeah, there's no sort of like there shouldn't be any like the commitment between the artist and the audience is like is listening, but not like not from the structure like first second to like to to the end, or have to listen to the whole piece. Because yeah, it's not pop music where you have like the chorus and then you have the intro, the chorus, and it's only lasts like three minutes or something like that. For sound arts, somehow the commitment is somehow bigger, wider, and from the audience perspective, is like me. Sometimes I went to some exhibitions. I know like some works is really great, but you simply don't have like 3 hours to sit there and listen or like watch through the whole piece. There are some good movies like 8 hours. Like yeah, you simply don't have the time for it, and you shouldn't feel like it shouldn't be something like okay, because you cannot finish the full 8 hours or like full 4 hours, then you are considered like you cannot finish the works. So for me, like my work at least is something like even if you listen to like 10 seconds, is considered like we already have the interaction and all this. And yeah, this is something like I like to say about my works, or like what I understanding of the artworks in general, because there are lots of rules sort of like in the art roles or in the whichever arts is it, like literature, theater, dance, or whatever. And from the beginnings, like, or actually even until today, is that when I like learn about some rules, the next thing I wanted to do is I try to break it. Yeah. Okay. Maybe should we listen to the last tracks, which is the track number 6? Like all the composition you listen to until now is very much like my old works. So the track 6, or the one that you're going to listen to, is actually so-called my newest work, but it was back in 2019. And then since then onwards, I think I put out most of my works on Bandcamp. So if you have time, you can listen to them from Bandcamp. It's free of charge. I mean, like, it's free to listen. So, okay, now we listen to track 6. Thank you very much. So yeah, what you listened to was coming from these CDs. Yeah, the last physical copies I produced back in 2019. Yeah, okay. I think yeah, somehow that's it. Like, thank you very much. That's my presentation for today. But yeah, I think I'll probably feel much better to answer the question instead of like talking by myself. So yeah, feel free to ask me any questions. Like right now, we open the floor for Q&A.
Yeah, thanks so much. And just apologies, the internet was lagging slightly for the playback there. So apologies. Yeah, let's for Q&A. People Zoom, perhaps you can put your hand. And we have students in the classroom to ask any questions. There is and there. I think you just need to unmute if you want to walk up where the microphone is. You can see Daniel Freeman, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question if you want, or I'm also happy to get out if you like. If you have a moment,
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much.
go ahead.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Daniel.
Yeah, thanks for a really interesting presentation. I just wondered if there was an underlying theory or concept behind your work, like for instance with the last track, whether you had some particular theory in mind or inspired by something in particular, or whether it's just about investigating pure sound.
Okay. The last tracks is actually is okay. This I'm not sure if you heard like there's this composers sound artist called Robert Astley from US. He's kind of like pioneers. And so I one of the like influence when I first started getting to all this academic music or sound art was his composition automatic writing. So the last piece, I'm somehow trying to play with the same idea, like creating something like an opera thingy, because I just learned that he labeled his work as an opera. And me, I got fascinated by the operas, the idea of producing a composed an opera composition, because like here in Malaysia or somehow like it's not something that any like most people will, even the composer will have interest in, because it's like to the understanding of opera is something really grand, really big, and then this like you need to write a lot of lyrics and things like that. So yeah, and then with the last compositions is like if you can hear the vocal or the lyrics that they keep on looping, it's just like friends, she just react to my other works by saying it's very boring. So I loop it, and then somehow, of course, playing in the way like what Robert Ashley did with the automatic writing, or like in the music concrete, speed it up and change it, adding things like, and then include the ambient sound and all this, the sound back from one speaker, record it back with a recorder and play it back to another speaker, like bouncing around something that I'm sitting in the rooms. But yeah, what you heard was 4 minutes, but the actual length of the composition is things, yeah, about 20 minutes.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Any other questions? I've just shared what I think the link you shared with us, Lee Kwang, which is your Bandcamp.
Yeah.
But I think it's a specific album. Did you want to talk about that? Immortal?
Oops. I can talk about other, but I'm not sure I can talk about Immortal because this is somehow new. I think I just like it's one of my latest composition. It was only like last week or something, but I think after I shared the composition, I was very much into preparing this presentation. So I have not much recalling. So what was going on during like the composition process? But okay, the this composition is very much is digital synthesizer generated. So the sound source is actually coming from field recording. Yeah, the field recordings from the sort of like the so something like the outtake, like things that I'm edit out from my other projects, or like from what I don't feel like okay keeping in my hard drive storage, like those sounds that taking up lots of space of my hard drive storage. I sort of like put them together, but instead of uh like technical wise, instead of like I'm used it as a sound collage, I convert them to like digital signals, and then like trigger the digital scenes to come out with the compositions. Yeah. So okay, yeah, I mean like this is one of the way, like as I always say, I think the term sound palettes is like as I'm still like doing the painting, is like whenever it's like so when I compose or when I produce the sound, produce a artwork, there's, to me, is always like an ongoing process. Of course, sometimes like a title or a composition is like somehow is like when I'm framing it, to me it's just like okay, for time being, maybe this okay, this composition is called Immortal. It's just like now it's up on Bandcamp, like people can listen to it. But maybe one day, maybe like I will still like going back to this and then cut a few seconds of it, or like maybe a few minutes of it, and try to play with, brand it to others, or like yeah. Actually, I have a project. It's called I'm Not DJing, and it's a project that I will DJ my own composition in the way that I'm just like having two sound source, like two turntable, and then playing back, mixing my own composition, like two or more than two composition, and then layering them in real times, and something like improvisations. Yeah. So I'm so sorry for those composers who spend a lot of time composing like structural compositions and things like that. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not working toward that directions.
Thank you. I see we have a question from
Thank
Robin.
you.
Robin, do you want to set yourself, or do you want me to read that out for you?
Or I
Maybe
can,
I'll
yeah,
read it out just in case.
maybe I can.
Well, yeah, I'll read it out just in case people
Yeah.
can't read the chat. Okay. Robin asks, would you be able to speak more on the process of developing conceptual meaning within your work, and how a can be connected to the sound in relation to political or social issues?
Okay. Actually, yeah, I try to avoid get into that, because it's somehow like when we talk about socials or politicals, it can be, yeah, it can be very real or it can be very abstract. But of course, I'm sure like most of the if you don't know, there is a English musicians that from a band called AMM. Is kind of like a pioneer improvisation band back in the 60s. And the percussionist drummer, his name is Eddie Provo. He wrote a book called No Sound is Innocence. So if you, yeah, you can get, I'm sure you can still get the books. So if you read the book, then you know, like, yeah, talking about social and political thingy in the piece of art, it is something, is a, to me, I'm not sure if it's a good idea, because like it is very politic to involve arts with politics. And the good thing, of course, like in the current situation, like we know, like I'm not sure if I should say that, but the world is turning from bad to worse. So, but arts is something like, it's not an escape, but it's a way to maybe see things more clearer, or to understanding to keep one like as an artist, or like it keep you thinking like much deeper or better, or like more self-awareness or more consciously toward a lot of social issue, political issues, and so that you don't have to, or you won't be get dragged into the mainstream thinking, like you have to choose between the left and right, or like the good and bad, right or wrong, and all these things. Like you can have your own perspective. Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure if I answer your
Thank you,
questions,
Lee
but
Kwang.
yeah.
I hope, I'm sure Robin took something from your answer. Thank you. Angela, would you like to ask your question? I'll leave you a little gap in case
Yeah,
you
sure.
want to unmute. Hi.
Hi there.
Hello.
Thanks for your talk today. I just wanted to ask, how do you detach from, like, when you said about you don't mind how little or much someone listens to one of your pieces on Bandcamp, like whether they start at the beginning or the end or whatever. How is that experience? Because I feel like personally, I'm almost the opposite. Like I want them to be like sitting in this room. I want them to close their eyes. I want them, how do you do that?
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually a very good question. But it's like, okay, if I'm going, like, I can tell a bit of stories, like to give a longer answers was like, okay, I've been invited to a lots of like festival to perform or like to create sound installation. And then of course it's like coming from Southeast Asia, like, and then unless like I've got invited to go to Europe where we can have fancy equipments like concert halls and all these things, mostly like even like my upcoming project, which is going to happen next week, I'm invited to create sound installations, but even until now, they cannot even give me a list of like what speaker do they have. They might not even have a speakers. They simply like did not tell me, or they're not getting back to me yet. So like working in a situation like this, like I was sorry to say, but if you put too much love into your work, you will always get disappointed. Like you were like, sometimes I used to send a tag list like, oh, I asked for like 2 subwoofer, 16-inch subwoofer, and then like another 64 speakers and things like that. And then when you are there at the concert hall, they tell you like, we only have like a stereo set. Then what would you do? Of course, like it's either you walk out from there, or like think about the audience, like, or think about myself, like travel maybe like 10, 12 hours there just to perform for 10 minutes, and I can walk out, or I can just deal with 2 speakers. And of course, another way to do it, which is like the way I'm doing it, like if you have more than 2,000 compositions, you will somehow, you feel less burden or less responsibility toward your works. I'm not sure if it's a good advice, but this is how I'm doing it.
I love that. That's really great. Burdened is a brilliant way of putting it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Great question. And yeah, I love that answer as well. I think it's, I was going to ask, just because you said you've kind of been doing sound art and music for 20 years, and you've got over 2,000 compositions that you've released, 2,000 works. So that's like 100 works a year. So that's almost like, my maths is so bad, 8 to 10 a month. I don't know. So is it something you're doing every day, and then you release quite frequently, or like what's your, or do you just like not do anything for a few months and then have a big spurt and release loads of tracks at once? Like what's your kind of process there's a lot. Like in terms of quantity, it's a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's actually, that's one of the things that in my note, but I try to skip that because, actually, I believe in consistencies, because like as an artist trained as a visual backgrounds, like you always have to spend like, you always have to keep on like doing practice. Like same actually with the musicians, you have to practice like 8 hours a day, it's like non-stop that. Although like as I said earlier, I try to get away from there, like I try to get more life for myself, but actually I'm still like regardless what happened, I will still spend as much time as possible in the studios. Like, of course, on the other hand, it's like I have a lot of ideas. Like I'm drawing my inputs from whichever, like from my surrounding, from books, from movie, from dance and whatever. But at the same time, I'm somehow considered as like hardworking. Like I spend a lot of time in studios, like creating works. Yeah, and of course, on the other hand, it's also like I'm consider myself very lucky because like I got lots of invitations. So it's like even sometimes I find that, oh, I need a holiday, but looking at the schedule is actually not possible. And then I just have to keep working.
Thank you. Curious just
Thank you.
about, and please asking more questions because they're on my mind, but others please do write in the chat or put up your hand if you would like to ask Lee Kwang any questions. But for previous answer and just kind of talking about the kind of, I guess, the reality of work you are, and like you say, you thought you were going to 16 speakers or 64, and then you turn up and there's 2, and you just kind of have to respond and work with it. What are the main differences between like when you've been invited to like Europe or the Americas or kind of and then working in Southeast Asia, and what are the kind of advantages and disadvantages of both, or if you can share anything like in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, like working in South Asia, we somehow like there's a bond among the sound artists, the composers, the musicians. Like we know, like is basically is all the whichever event or whatever is always run by passions. Like you're not going to get rich out of this festival or that festival. That we just like when we are invited, like let's say go to Bangkok or Manila or Jakarta, we just our contribution is just to support our friends over there because we know they are struggling as well. So like try to sort of like bringing this thing that is like most people will not agree with, like like what is this for, even like it's not music, there's not much, or actually there's no commercial value and all these things. So like based on the understanding, of course, then we know like we when we like when it comes to the works, we always like, I'm not saying compromise, but of course we always think in the very like friendly, can I use that? It's like I would probably say like the works will come in the more friendly term, like is of course with more flexibilities. Like even if you just give me like a speakers, or like you give me just 2 audience, I'm fine with it, something like that. And then of course working in Europe or somehow so-called like the first world country, like we know like of course the downside is the bureaucratic. There's all this like this there's so much paper, so many paperwork we have to fill in, they have to explain ourselves in the way like to me somehow it's like it's not really important or it's not relevant to arts, but then there's so many forms to fill in, so many questions to answers. But of course the good thing is that sometimes, or actually most of the times, you got to somehow like you got to say like you got a platform that you can really express yourself in a way like it's rarely happen like people promise you like 64 speakers and you only get 2. When they say 64, you usually get 64. So which is the good part. Yeah.
Thank you. Great. Anyone else have a question for Lee Kwang? I guess for most of the people who've been to Malaysia or Southeast Asia, what do you think how would you describe the kind of the scene there, experimental music and sound art, maybe in relation to wider society? Is there anything you I'm also asking for myself because it's not something I'm that familiar with.
I would say like in the art scene itself, like people like who might not interested in the experimental art or experimental whatever, they will still think like the experimental scenes, like the music, the arts, or like whatever, is the most energetic scenes compared to others, because we are somehow like, of course, like I said just now, we run by passions. Like we organize event because we like to be the audience. Like otherwise, like no one, we have no chance to even listen to others people's works and something like that. And we are not aggressive. I mean, like most of the but my artist friends, like in Southeast Asia, we are not aggressive, but we are hardworking. Like we do things that we probably say yes to whatever request. Like if I'm going to Jakarta, like some friend of us, they will let me stay at their place, and then they will set up a concert, and then they will like connect me to some other friend, new friends, young friends, or like introduce me to lots of peoples. And then which is something is very it's very encouraging, like compared to like maybe compared to maybe some so-called like proper institutions where they only do things maybe like by paper or things like that. So it's very organic, and then there are lots of life in that.
Thank you for sharing that. And is that like, do you think the younger people getting into experimental music, do they also work in this kind of DIY? Are they more, do they have other ways of getting together, putting on events? Is there young people seeing that you're just describing? Like,
I mean, like, yes and no, maybe, because of course first of all, the understanding of DIY might be different now. As in, like, okay, like maybe now the young people is like they maybe instead of like they help you to organize a concert or like a sharing session, they help you to do a Instagram live. So they're like, okay, you come to my place, like you come to Jakarta, and then like instead of putting up a concert for these people, they'll know like, okay, most of their friends will probably watch the Insta live, the FB live, so they'll put out a live streamings for me. So it's still, to me, this is still very much DIY, but of course it's different from like people have to running around, give away flyers, and then like bring people to the venues and things like that.
thank you. Daniel, did you want to ask your question to come back?
Sure, thanks. I've done a fair bit of experimental music myself, quite different from your stuff. And I just wondered, what's been one of the most unexpected reactions to your music, and why, and how did that make you feel? Sorry, to your friend, I should say.
Okay. So honestly, it's like if it's from this my current status, is like I don't really actually expecting anything from the audience, so to say. So I actually quite open for any reactions, that I won't feel surprised, and like, or whichever, like I say, like I'm not going to attach, I won't say I'm not going to attach, I did not attach a lot of emotion towards my works and things like that. So I'm not really take any reaction into considerations, and like don't feel thing. But I can tell you, like in the early days, or not really in the back in those days, but sometimes you'll find like the good thing is like maybe you just make some like very simple experimental, like I put up electric guitars on like a very unstable platform. So when it's like it's on the pathway in the theater, but it's not inside the theater, but it's like when during the so-called the concourse area, when people are waiting to go into the theater, and whenever like people walk past, because of the vibration, you create some like harmonic sounds or some noise. And of course, there are always people come to you, they tell you that they like the work, they find it very inspiring, and to me that was very encouraging, because it's just a very simple setup.
Thanks very much.
And then of course sometimes like in the opposites, like okay, you spend like months produce a work, and then like you have like so-called a world premiere somewhere, and then somehow it happened to me once. It's like I did a piece, it is somehow, yes, I have to admit, like it is very, very, very loud. Like it's meant to play loud, but it's not a very long piece. It was only like yeah, it's very short. It's just a few minutes composition. And when we did the sound check, everything was okay. And during the actual performance, I realized that the sound or the technician team, they only play back the PA, like because I was standing on stage, they only play back the sound from the monitors to me. Like from the audience, they totally shut it off because they think it's too loud.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something very, very unexpected.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Lee Kwang?
Yeah, I mean, the more questions, then it makes me somehow like remind me of like, actually there's something that maybe I'd like to share. But yeah, more question, please.
Abby, are you able to unmute and ask your question? Or would you
Hi.
rather?
Are you able to
Hi.
hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello,
Hello.
thank you so much for the presentation. I was just wondering a little bit about if you have any favorite spaces or kinds of spaces that you like to play or perform your work in. I think given that a lot of the pieces that you shared are just really like texturally really rich, also have a lot of different kinds of instrumentation. I would love to know if you sort of prefer like classical sort of music hall kind of spaces, or perhaps places that offer more of like a surround sound, like enveloping bodies kind of situation.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Actually, coming from Southeast Asia, it's like I actually much prefer like I would say like unconventional space, like because over here we have a lot of artist run space where like of course it will be the artist run space usually is in the somehow like rural areas or like where is less accessible, but then the space of course is that they don't have like very fancy lighting or soundproof and all this or even good sound systems, but it's actually opened up a new possibility for my work, because sometimes like I somehow like to engage improvisation or like accidentally sounds into my works. So even if it's a fixed compositions, I don't mind, or actually I would make some changes, or I'm open to any changes based on the space. So if I'm going to a space, let's say like it's a residential area where they have the living room and then they have the guest room and things like that. Instead of like I'm just like okay, gather all the audience in the living room or in the big hall and then play back my sound, I would just on the spot maybe I will ask if there's any musicians like or anyone who know how to play any instruments, and then I will just somehow like verbally tell them to make some sound, like play, like tell them like don't do any rhythm or don't play back any fixed melody, but instead like yeah, I give them maybe, or yeah, worst come to worst, I will give them one note. I tell them to play one long note or things like that. But then I will spread the musicians to different rooms and then like invite the audience to walk around instead of like sitting there and listen to the compositions. That's actually what usually happens. Like yeah, instead of fix the audience like sitting, I would let the audience to walk around, because mostly because I'm very nervous if that people are like sitting around and looking at me. Yeah, I'll try to not to get on stage as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of chimes in with what you're saying, Lee Kwang, about seeing your pieces as kind of sound installations. I thought that was really interesting, like seeing the kind of beginning, middle, and end necessarily, and yeah, almost even your released works, imagining people walking around and I guess like sharing attention. Is that kind of what you try and do in your live performances
Yeah.
as well?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you for your question, Abby. If there's no other, I wanted to ask something a bit related, but just more about venues for sound art and experimental music in Kuala Lumpur, or if you can, the places in Southeast Asia. Like, are there established, like long established venues, like play and host this kind of, or are there more like nights or kind of collectives that move across different venues? Like, do they always go off like hitch free? Do they sometimes get shut down? Is there like licensing, or do you just kind of set up a sound system, a space, and then invite people? Is it regulated or is it unregulated? Yeah, and are of your favorite kind of I guess like experimental music collectives or nights, events that you recommend if anyone goes there?
Okay, yeah. Okay, there's actually a lot of questions, but okay, let me just answer it one by one. It's like, okay, officially we don't have like any museum or gallery dedicated to sound art, but we have our national art galleries, which is like on and off, maybe every 5-10 years they will organize like a sound art related event, symposium and things like that. And then some smaller official venue will probably happen inside the theater or inside the gallery of the universities. Like when I said university, because like in Malaysia, there's some university so-called like it's actually government-funded universities. So it has a different concept like of like what they can do with the space. So it's always somehow you might have to be like, it's not necessarily politically correct, but they will probably prefer works like suitable for to meet their political agenda. But there are still, of course, the museum or galleries and things like that. And then other than that, of course, we have so-called commercial theater or like commercial space, which is not really commercial because most of their works are not really like generate any income or anything as well. They are also like survive based on like some grants or anything like that, which is like it's not dedicated to sound art, but they are open for proposals. As in that if you have some ideas or if there's sometimes like they have a festival, most of the arts festival here, I will probably consider them fall under like lifestyle festival, like they have fashion and then they have music, they have dance, they have whatever. So and then a sound arts, it will fall somehow. It can be part of the music, part of the visual art or whatever, as long as like if they accept the proposals, or like if I'm invited, then I will propose them something which is something different, and if they accept the proposals, then then it can happen in the venue like this as well. And then of course then there are lots of not lots, but there actually the artist run space are booming, because basically it's like lots of art students, or even like from or actually the young people's, like a few of them, like basically 3-5 of them, they can form a groups like unofficially, but then they can rent a space like a shop lots and then run it as a venues. So the downside is here, like the government is very strict when it comes to public gathering. So like when we do event, is mostly just amongst friends. When they do event, it's basically just among friends that they know, or they will promote it through social media, but not really aggressive. And of course, for the same reason as well, there's not many, or basically there are none so-called ad hoc event, because it's not going to happen. Like you cannot just simply, like there's no gorilla event and things like that, because it's very dangerous, or it's quite risky to run event like that, to have event like that. And basically no one would go and try to do that. And of course, technical wise, like there's very little support when it comes to equipment and all these things, if we want to do like a pop-up gorilla or like an ad hoc event. but there are actually really the scenes here actually I would consider like quite active and quite healthy. So whenever like people like I of course I'm not going to list out like who you can contact or where you can contact, but if anyone who are interested to come and meet some people or like do some presentation or performance, you can contact me, and then yeah, I can always like connect you with some people, some friends.
Thank you. So to hear
Yeah,
kind of
thank you.
the different how it's and I guess the different constraints. So did you say that the government university does some things with art?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like there are some of course, the university they have their own arts departments, like visual art or performance art and things like that. So sometimes they would have event like that. Like if you it's always the same. Like if you can send in your proposals and then they somehow agree with you or they find that your work is actually is all right to like include it in their festival, in their event, then it can happen. Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating. Okay, we still got if anyone has any questions. I thought it was tired, Lee Kwang, because it's almost midnight. But I think maybe
Now
students are a little bit sleepy. There's not that many questions anymore.
it's 10 after 12. So, but yeah, because like, cool. Thank you.
It's past midnight for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for late into the night to talk to us.
Oh, don't
Okay, if
worry.
there's
I'm happy to
no
do so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
if there's no more questions, is there share Lee Kwang or ask our students and guests? So it's a mixture of students from BA Sound Arts, MA Sound Arts, HD, students from the Chris App Research Centre, but also some external guests who I think just sign up to the Zoom links.
Okay. I mean, like, if anyone have any questions, I think like, they can still write me like from the. I'm not sure how the thing. Oh yeah, I'm not sure how the Bandcamp messenger work because I think it's somehow very crippled. But if anyone interested, you can write me through Instagram or like Facebook. I'm sure like I will get the message. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So
thank
yeah,
you.
if any further questions, yeah.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. That's how I reached out to you as well, I think.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lee Kwang. It's been fantastic about your kind of journey in sound arts from your perspective. And yeah, let us know if you're in London anytime. It sounds like you're in Europe quite frequently, so hopefully some of us can catch your next tour or performances over here. Thank you everyone for the questions.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Any more questions or yeah?
Any more questions? If not, then yeah, you can reach out
Yeah.
to Lee Kwang.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, I can say something before we close. It's like, because like, think that you like, to somehow like so-called to survive as a full-time artist. So this, I don't think I mentioned that, right? Like, of course, most people would think like, grant is, of course, the grant is very important. Art grants, like you have to consistently apply, but actually I'm not the like very active grant persons. But on the other hand, I think like most I think what keeps me going is actually like to create works, like a platform or like the opportunity to create works, and of course you need to have the ideas, but also it's like if one can consistently have ideas of like what you wanted to do. Like, yeah, regardless of maybe today you're making music and then 3 days after you like to make a movie, or you like to write some story, write some poetry, or making painting. And if once consistently have ideas that to think, this is actually is the best way to stay creative, instead of like, because I know people, I do met people who say like, yeah, no grant, no works. Like they will not produce anything unless there's grant. But then, of course, what they have to do in between, then they have to get the jobs. Like, yeah. So if one like to stay as like full times, like fully like focus on making arts, then yeah, I think the most important is, of course, is the work itself, than the or some other all other stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess that's like from your perspective, the important thing, right?
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lee Kwang. Okay, we'll leave you with a final word. Many thanks.
Okay. Thank you,
You're not so
everyone.
late. Take care.
No,
Bye.
yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Bye.